course I'm on your side, but I still have to sell the stuff.
Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the Zelda Dungeon video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Our first question comes from Legendary Sword. I was curious if you could list your top 5 Zelda games and mention why they are on your list. Well, of course, this is something you guys should tell me what your top 5 are. My top 5 is, first place goes to Majora's Mask, as I've mentioned before. It's my favorite game in the series. I personally, it's a personal thing, I feel it surpassed Ocarina of Time, but obviously that's up to opinion. I think, well, and then, number 2 on my list is the Minish Cap. And again, that's, it's totally personal preference. I don't even think that's one of the best games. For some reason, I got a kick out of it. I think it had a lot to do with the graphical style, which I really was quite a big fan of. Third favorite is Ocarina of Time, of course. I mean, it's got to be on there, right? Fourth favorite is A Link to the Past. Now, the odd thing there is I actually think A Link to the Past is, personally in my opinion, it's the best game in the series. It's just not my favorite on a personal level. That would be Majora's Mask. And my 5th place is actually a tie between Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. I'll go into it more on my upcoming video this week, but basically, I just can't pick between them. I know that's a pretty odd list. Probably most people are like, what? But that's it. So tell me your guys' lists. Our second question comes from Lucius6. In all the games, Zelda has a somewhat different personality, so I would like to know which Zelda you like best. Well, actually, in my last video, I talked a bit about Spirit Tracks Zelda, and the fact is, she's one of the two tied Zeldas for my favorite. Excuse me there. My 2 favorite Zeldas are, Tetra/Zelda from the Wind Waker, and the Spirit Tracks Zelda. Those are my 2 favorites. I just thought Tetra was a great character, kind of smart-mouthed and awesome. And I also thought Spirit Tracks Zelda was also very cool. And, I mean, she was kind of cute, but she also actually had some very funny moments, like when she was, towards the end of the game, there's a scene where she's doing boxing motions. I thought that was a crack-up. And, yeah. What are your guys' favorite Zelda, though? Third question. Alex Wong asks, were you surprised when you found out Sheik and Tetra were Princess Zelda? Actually, it's funny because it's very different for both of them. With Sheik, I actually didn't find it out playing the game. I accidentally found it out online. And I was like, what?! I was shocked. I was blown away. I didn't even expect that at all. I mean, it just blew my mind, And with Tetra, I saw it coming a mile away. I mean, 100 miles away. I, knew it was happening, the second Tetra appeared. And I didn't get that one spoiled. And, so when it happened, I was just like, yeah, I knew it! What about you guys, though? X Majora X asks, do you think The Legend of Zelda, The Ancient Stone Tablets is part of the Zelda Timeline? I've actually had a debate about this before. I don't think I did very well in said debate, but I actually don't think The Ancient Stone Tablets is. First off, I mean, it's a side-ish game, and as I've talked about before, I don't really feel like the side games necessarily should be, necessarily thrown right in there. A lot of them can work in the timeline, but I don't feel like most of them, you should be taking them that seriously because they're side games. And I think Stone Tablets is sort of like the side game to end all side games. It was basically constructed in a lot of ways like a contest, and, the fact is I think that might be all they intended it as. I know it had a story, but Zelda always does. So if it was a Zelda contest, it had contest game. That was the weirdest thing ever, by the way. It would have to have some sort of a story. I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of reason to suspect it is part of the continuity, and I don't believe it had I mean, I don't know much about the story, but I don't imagine it was something that really played off the other games. It just probably was, its own thing. But I don't really know, so maybe I should not talk about things I don't know about. I think I've said all I can say on that. Slay Angel asks, there is a theory about Termina and Hyrule being linked by a warp in the Lost Woods. What do you think about that, considering Skull Kid came from the Lost Woods in Hyrule to drag Link into Termina? Well, actually, it is definite, of course, that there are 2 different worlds, Hyrule and Termina, And it's also definite that Link transported at some point. I believe at the beginning of Majora's Mask, he was in Hyrule, and he transported to Termina. That goes without saying. The thing is I don't think it necessarily had to be the Lost Woods. I think, that's kind of like, just because it was woods, it had to be the Lost Woods. I mean, there's a very strong possibility of it, but, at the same time, it was just a random wood. Don't you think they would have said if it was the Lost Woods? It didn't play any kind of it did play the Lost Woods theme at the end, but that was just the generic forest theme. So I don't really know. I don't think there's a lot of reason to think so, but it's possible at the same time. As for, the Skull Kid, I definitely believe it was supposed to be the same Skull Kid that you gave the mask to as part of the mask trade sequence in Ocarina of Time. And I also believe, the Happy Mask Salesman is the same Happy Mask Salesman. I think they were probably both native to... Well, actually, I don't know where they were native to. I think the Happy Mask Salesman was from Hyrule. But borderline is they were two characters, in my opinion, that were able to transport between the worlds as well. That's all I can say. Sakura Vision asks, how much of a gap do you think is between Ocarina of Time and The Wind Waker? And what do you think of a game taking place between the two? Well... In the game, they say... some developer statements have said it was 100 years afterwards, but the fact is, and this is hilarious, it's directly contradicted by in-game text that says hundreds, as in more than 100, and that's the only way it could work out. You see, you can't suddenly have this calamity happen. You can't, lose the whole population, or a lot of it. You can't not migrate in, this godly flood that the gods sent down, and you can't migrate onto the rooftops after speaking to the gods and them hearing your prayers or whatever, and, all that stuff. That's some big stuff. That's major stuff right there. And you're on top of the mountain, and then, within one generation, or maybe two, which is about 100 years, you forget. That doesn't happen. There's no way that remnants of the Hyrulean civilization and memory of said civilization would be gone in 100 years. Somewhere between 100 and 1,000? Sure, not 100. So that's the only way it could be. A game in between, in terms of spacing between the games, could totally work, except I think it's kind of like the events don't really put much room for it. I mean, it's just the floods. I mean, what could happen in there? Ganon takes over. There's no hero. I have actually put some games in between, but not during that flood period. I mean, I know it doesn't necessarily fit perfectly. Probably there are better alternatives, but I actually have sort of thought about, what if Link to the Past is between them? But, that's not really a very acceptable timeline theory anyway, so I don't know. I'm crazy. Link Legend asks, do you want new Zelda games to have warping like Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, or Majora's Mask? Well, the thing is, the warping has been there a very long time, since the original Zelda game, actually. Some games haven't used it, but it's been a constant, thing in the series. And the thing is that Epona and the transportation vehicles are the new thing. With Skyward Sword, in particular, I don't really think we're going to see those, but I think we will have the warping. I think we're going to have, the on-foot thing and a focus on warping for the high-speed travel. But I don't really know. I definitely would like to see more of that in future games, the warping, because, who wants to run all the way from one end of the world to another end? But at the same time, I don't really like the transportation method, so why not warping? It's what we did before. Yeah. Brendan Kaus, I think that's how you pronounce it, asks, was hoping you could tell me why Nintendo isn't showing the Skyward Sword, because in the trailer and the demo, all you see is the Master Sword. Well, the thing is, the Skyward Sword is factually confirmed to become the Master Sword. Now, you could think it's some kind of shape-changing transformation, but at the same time, I sort of think it's not going to change that much. I think it might either gain or lose power, but it's going to maintain the same shape. In other words, I'm pretty certain that that sword we're seeing is actually just the Skyward Sword, not the Master Sword. It ain't even going to look any different. Which may be a case of being very creative. Like they're saying to Miyamoto, well, let's make a new sword. And he's like, okay, but let's make it look exactly the same. I don't know. I'm ragging on Miyamoto. But, it's the same sword. It's a different sword. Black Cat 23 asks, do you think we will see Dark Link in Skyward Sword? Thing is Dark Link's been kind of a fan favorite, but he hasn't really had any actual plot relevance since, the second game. And, I think in Twilight Princess and Spirit Tracks, we've sort of seen an example. I think we've not a lot to think this yet, but I kind of suspect it's going to become a trend that they're going to throw Dark Link in as sort of fan service. They're going to put him in to please the fans, and they're just going to put him in because in those games he didn't really have a significant appearance, less so than in other games. So I think we might see a trend of that. I think he will appear in Skyward Sword. I don't know what he's going to do, or if he's even going to be a boss. I don't know, but I think we're going to start seeing him a lot more, and almost all the time, maybe even. Ashley Wood asks, in your last video you said that the Picori came from the sky. Do you think that the Picori could be the inhabitants of Skyloft? Well, theoretically they could be, although we know that Link is from Skyloft and that the general inhabitants are like normal humanoids. Or Hylians, whatever you want to call them. The thing about the Picori is they came from the sky, but that's how it was stated in the legend. I don't think that's literally fact, because they came from like the Minish world. And I think that the thing with the Picori and the Minish, or whatever, the themes of the Minish Cap, is that they were interesting, and they seemed to go with the timeline, but at the same time, I think that a lot of the elements in the Minish Cap were sort of just made up for the Minish Cap. I don't expect to see much of that carry over to other games. Now, we might see these connections with Skyward Sword, so I don't know. That's just the feeling I've got. Last question. Benjamin Brown asks, I was watching your videos and you mentioned something about the Hylian Crest being the symbol for Skyward Sword. Since birds are air creatures, do you think that the Triforce Bird could have its origins explained in Skyward Sword? Maybe. I think rather than like there being an actual bird, like an actual creature or something, I think that we might see an example of either why that symbol exists, why they use that symbolism, or merely the creation of perhaps the royal family, as I've discussed before, and that could be the only reason that their crest is the game. I mean, like a bird, that's a common, like, noble animal. It's not that illogical to just stick it on your crest. It might not have meant anything or been based on anything. But bottom line is that I think it's going to have something to do with the formation of the royal family, or with the royal family at least. The bird, I believe, symbolizes that. Whether that means we're going to see references to some kind of bird or reason that there's a bird, I don't know. That's it for this time, guys. Be sure to send your questions to the email address in the description, and later.